Hello, everyone. I hope everyone's doing well in the world. Today's update will be Zecharia Sitchin's 12th planet, beginning of chapter 5, titled The Nephilim, People of the Fiery Rockets. Sumerian and Akkadian texts leave no doubt that the peoples of the ancient Near East were certain that the gods of heaven and earth were able to rise from earth and ascend into the heavens, as well as roam earth's skies at will. In a text dealing with the rape of Inanna or Ishtar by an unidentified person, he justifies his deed thus: One day my queen, after crossing heaven, crossing earth, Inanna, after crossing heaven, crossing earth, after crossing Elam and Shubur, after crossing, the Herodot approached weary, fell asleep. I saw her from the edge of my garden, kissed her, copulated with her. Inanna here described as roaming the heavens over many lands that lie far apart, feats possible only by flying, herself spoke on another occasion of her flying. In a text which S. Langdon, in Revue d'Assyriologie et d'Archéologie Orientale, named a classical liturgy to Inini, the goddess laments her expulsion from her city. Acting on the instructions of Enlil, an emissary who brought to me the word of heaven, entered her throne room, his unwashed hands put on me, and after other in- indignities, me from my temple they caused to fly. A queen am I whom from my city like a bird they caused to fly. Such a capability by Inanna, as well as other major gods, was often indicated by the ancient artists by depicting the gods anthropomorphic in all other respects, as we have seen with wings. The wings, as can be seen from numerous depictions, were not part of the body, not natural wings, but rather a decorative attachment to the god's clothing in figure 58 below. Inanna or Ishtar, whose far-flung travels are mentioned in many ancient texts, commuted between her initial distant domain in Arata and her coveted abode in Uruk. Let's take a look at this figure real quick before we turn the page. There's Inanna depicting with her wings, as Sitchin called them. She called upon Enki in Eridu and in Lil in Nippur and visited her brother Utu at his headquarters in Sapar. But her most celebrated journey was to the lower world, the domain of her sister Ereshkigal. The journey was the subject not only of epic tales, but also of artistic depictions on cylinder seals, the later showing the goddess with wings to stress the fact that she flew over from Sumer to the lower world in figure 59 just below. So here she's calling upon the two gods, Enki and Enlil, from their lands. And there's Inanna right there. Enki sitting over here. There's Enlil and her descent to the underworld. The text dealing with this hazardous journey describe how Inanna very meticulously put on herself 7 objects prior to the start of the voyage, and how she had to give them up as she passed through the 7 gates leading to her sister's abode. 7 such objects are also mentioned in other texts dealing with Inanna's skyborne travels. 1. The Shugara she put on her head. measuring pendants on her ears, chains of small blue stones around her neck, twin stones on her shoulders, a golden cylinder in her hands, straps clasping her breasts, the pala garment clothed around her body. Though no one has Though no one has as yet been able to explain the nature and significance of these seven objects, we feel that the answer has long been available. Excavating the Assyrian capital Assur from 1903 to 1914, Walter Andre and his colleagues found in the temple of Ishtar a battered statue of the goddess showing her with various contraptions attached to her chest and back. In 1934, archaeologists excavating at Mari came upon a similar but intact statue buried in the ground. It was a life-size likeness of a beautiful woman. Her unusual headdress was adorned with a pair of horns indicating that she was a goddess. Standing around the 4,000-year-old statue, the archaeologists were thrilled by her lifelike appearance. In a snapshot, one can hardly distinguish between the statue and the living men. They named her the goddess with a vase because she was holding a cylindrical object on figure 60. The next page. Yeah, the next page. Unlike the flat carvings or bas reliefs, this life size, three dimensional representation of the goddess reveals interesting features about her attire. On her head, she wears not a mariner's chapeau, but a special helmet. Protruding from it on both sides and fitted over the ears are objects that remind one of a pilot's earphones. On her neck and upper chest, the goddess wears a necklace of many small and probably precious stones. In her hands, she holds a cylindrical object which appears too thick and heavy to be a vase for holding water. Over a blouse of see-through material, two parallel straps run across her chest, leading back to and holding in place an unusual box of rectangular shape. The box is held tight against the back of the goddess's neck and is firmly attached to the helmet with a horizontal strap. Whatever the box held inside must have been heavy, for the contraption is further supported by two large shoulder pads. The weight of the box is increased by a hose that is connected to its base by a circular clasp. The complete package of instruments, for this is what they undoubtedly were, is held in place with the aid of two sets of straps that crisscross the goddess's back and chest. The parallel between the seven objects required by Anana for her aerial journeys and the dress and objects worn by the statue from Mari, and probably also the mutilated one found at Ishtar's temple in Ashur, is easily proved. We see the measuring pendants, the earphones on her ears, the rows or chains of small stones around her neck, the twin stones, the two shoulder pads on her shoulders, the golden cylinder in her hands, and the clasping straps that crisscross her breast. She is indeed clothed in a pala garment, ruler's garment, and on her head she wears the Shugara helmet, a term that literally means that which makes go far into universe. So here was the illustrations in figure 60 of Inanna holding the vase that they say was too heavy to hold water, meaning it was a container of some sorts to hold some type of energy, possibly. Her headdress, the helmet, the two bulges on her shoulders. There's the crisscrossing in detail, but just hand drawn. All this suggests to us that the attire of Inanna was that of an astronaut, of an aeronaut, or an astronaut. The Old Testament called the angels of the Lord Malachim, literally emissaries, who carried divine messages and carried out divine commands. As so many instances reveal, they were divine airmen. Jacob saw them going up to a sky ladder. Hagar, Abraham's concubine, was addressed by them from the sky, and it was they who brought about the aerial destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. Excuse me, everyone. The biblical account of the events preceding the destruction of the two sinful cities illustrates the fact that these emissaries were, on the one hand, anthropomorphic in all respects, and on the other hand, they could be identified as angels as soon as they were observed. We learn that their appearance was sudden. Abraham raised his eyes, and lo and behold, there were three men standing by him. Bowing and calling them my lords, he pleaded with them, "Do not pass over thy servant," and prevailed on them to wash their feet, rest, and eat. Having done as Abraham had requested, two of the angels, the third man turned out to be the Lord himself, then proceeded to Sodom. Lot, the nephew of Abraham, was sitting at the gate of Sodom, and when he saw them, he rose up to meet them and bowed to the ground and said, "If it pleases my lords, pray come to the house of thy servant and wash your feet and sleep overnight." Then he made for them a feast, and they ate. When the news of the arrival of the two spread in the town, all of the townspeople, young and old, were surrounded the house and called out to Lot and said, "We are the men who came this night unto thee. How are these men who ate, drank, slept, and washed their tired feet, nevertheless so instantly recognizable as angels of the Lord?" The only plausible explanation is that they wore their helmets or uniforms, or what they carried, their weapons, made them immediately recognizable. That they carried distinctive weapons is certainly possible. Is certainly a possibility. The two men at Sodom, about to be lynched by the crowd, smote the people at the entrance of the house with blindness, and they were unable to find the doorway. And another angel, this time appearing to Gideon, as he was chosen to be a judge in Israel, gave him a divine sign by touching a rock with his baton, whereupon a fire jumped out of the rock. The team headed by Andre found yet another unusual depiction of Ishtar at her temple in Ashur, more a wall sculpture than the usual relief. It showed the goddess with a tight-fitting decorated helmet with the earphones extended as though they had their own flat antennas, and wearing very distinct goggles that were part of the helmet in figure 61, next page. Needless to say, any man seeing a person, male or female, so clad would at once realize that he is encountering a divine aeronaut. Clay figures found at Sumerian sites and believed to be some 5,500 years old may well be crude representations of such malachim holding wand-like weapons. In one instance, the face is seen through a helmet's visor. In the other instance, the emissary wears the distinct divine conical headdress and a uniform studded with circular objects of unknown function, figures 62 and 63. The eye slots or goggles of the figurines are a most interesting feature because the Near East in the 4th millennium BC was literally swamped with with wafer-like figurines that depicted in a stylized manner the upper part of the deities, exaggerating their most prominent feature, a conical helmet with elliptical visors or goggles in figure 64. A hoard of such figurines was found at Tal Brak, a prehistoric site on the Kabur River, the river on whose banks Ezekiel saw the divine chariot millennia later. It is undoubtedly no mere coincidence that the Hittites linked to Sumer and Akkad via the Kabur area adopted as their written sign for gods the symbol below down here. Clearly borrowed from the eye figurines. It is also no wonder that this symbol or hieroglyph for a divine being expressed in artistic styles came to dominate the art not only of Asia Minor but also of the early Greeks during the Minoan and Mycenaean periods in figure 65. Okay, so we got some figures to go over. Figure 61 was a more recent discovery of Ishtar wearing her helmet, and this time it looks like her quote unquote headphones had antenna on them. Figure 62 and 63. Sitchin was talking about divine conical headdresses and uniforms studded with circular objects of unknown functions. So we got the headdresses and those quote unquote studded jackets. Figure 64 down here at the bottom, guys. We have the helmet with the goggles or visors, elliptical visors, he called them. And 65 down at the bottom was a depiction of the Greeks and Minoan and the Mycenaean people, their depiction of such things. The ancient texts indicate that the gods put on such special attire not only for their flights in earth's skies, but also when they ascended to the distant heavens. Speaking of her occasional visits to Anu at his celestial abode, Inanna herself explained that she could undertake such journeys because Enlil himself fastened the divine me attire about my body. The text quoted Enlil as saying to her, "You have lifted the me. You have tied the me to your hands. You have gathered the me. You have attached the me to your breast. O Queen of all the me, O radiant light, who with her hand grasped the seven me." An early Sumerian ruler invited by the gods to ascend to the heavens was named Edmenduranki, Edmenranki, which literally meant ruler whose me connect. I butchered that, sorry guys. Which literally meant ruler whose me connect heaven and earth. An inscription by Nebuchadnezzar II describing the reconstruction of a special pavilion for Marduk's celestial chariot states that it was part of the fortified house of the seven me of heaven and earth. The scholars refer to the me as divine power objects. Literally, the term stems from the concept of swimming in celestial waters. Inanna described them as parts of the celestial garment that she put on for her journeys in the boat of heaven. The me were thus parts of the special gear worn for flying in Earth's skies as well as into outer space. The Greek legend of Icarus had him attempt to fly by attaching feathered wings to his body with wax. The evidence from the ancient Near East shows that the gods may have been depicted with wings to indicate their flying capabilities, or perhaps sometimes put on winged uniforms as a mark of their airmanship. They never attempted to use attached wings for flying, instead, they used vehicles for such travels. The Old Testament informs us that the patriarch Jacob spending the night in a field outside Haran, saw a ladder set up on earth, and its top reaching heavenwards, on which angels of the Lord were busily going up and down. The Lord himself stood at the top of the ladder, and the astounded Jacob was fearful, and he said, "Indeed, a God is present in this place, and I knew it not. How awesome is this place! Indeed, this is none but the Lord's abode, and this is the gateway to heaven." There are two interesting points in this tale. The first is that the divine beings going up and down at this gateway to heaven were using a mechanical facility, a ladder. The second is that the sight took Jacob by complete surprise. The Lord's abode, the ladder, and the angels of the Lord using it were not were not there when Jacob lay down to sleep in the field. Suddenly there was the awesome vision, and by morning the abode, the ladder, and their occupants were gone. We may conclude that the equipment used by the divine beings was some kind of craft that could appear over a place, hover for a while, and disappear from sight once again. The Old Testament also reports that the prophet Elijah did not die on earth, but he went up into heaven by a whirlwind. This was not a sudden and unexpected event. The ascent of Elijah to the heavens was prearranged. He was told to go to Beth El, the Lord's house, on a specific day. Rumors had already spread among his disciples that he was about to be taken up to the heavens. When they queried his deputy whether the rumor was true, he confirmed that indeed the Lord will take away the Master today, and then there appeared a chariot of fire and horses of fire, and Elijah went up into heaven by a whirlwind. Even more celebrated and certainly better described was the heavenly chariot seen by the prophet Ezekiel, who dwelt among the Judean deportees on the banks of the Kebur River in northern Mesopotamia. Excuse me, I'm gonna get something to drink real quick. The heavens were opened, and I saw the appearances of the Lord. What Ezekiel saw was a man-like being, surrounded by brilliance and brightness, sitting on a throne that rested on a metal firmament with the chariot. Excuse me. The vehicle itself, which could move whichever way upon wheels within wheels and raise off the ground vertically, was described by the prophet as a glowing whirlwind. And I saw a whirlwind coming from the north, as a great cloud with flashes of fire and brilliance all around it, and within it, from within the fire, there was a radiance like a glowing halo. Some recent students of the biblical description, such as Joseph F. Blumrich of the U.S. National Aeronautics and Space Administration, have concluded that the chariot seen by Ezekiel was a helicopter consisting of a cabin resting on four posts, each equipped with rotary wings, a whirlwind indeed. After, about 2 millennia earlier, when the Sumerian ruler Gudea commemorated his building the temple for his god Ninurta, He wrote that there appeared to him a man that shone like heaven. By the helmet on his head he was a god. When Ninurta and two divine companions appeared to Gudea, they were standing beside Ninurta's divine black winged bird. As it turned out, the main purpose of the temple's construction was to provide a secure zone, an inner special enclosure within the temple grounds for this divine bird. The construction of this enclosure, Gudea reported, required huge beams and massive stones imported from afar. Only when the divine bird was placed within the enclosure was the construction of the temple deemed completed. And once in place, the divine bird could lay hold on heaven and was capable of bringing together heaven and earth. The object was so important, sacred, that it was constantly protected by two divine weapons, the Supreme Hunter and the Supreme Killer, weapons that emitted beams of light and death-dealing rays. The similarity of the biblical and Sumerian descriptions, both of the vehicles and the beings within them, is obvious. The description of the vehicles as bird, wind bird, and whirlwind that could rise heavenward while emitting a brilliance leaves no doubt that they were some kind of flying machine. Enigmatic murals uncovered at Tal Ghassul, a site east of the Dead Sea, whose ancient name is unknown, may shed light on our subject. Dating to circa 3500 BC, the murals depict a large eight-pointed compass, the head of a helmeted person within a bell-shaped chamber, and two designs of mechanical craft that could well have been the whirlwinds of antiquity in Figure 66. So there's the two guardians of this sacred bird that bridges heaven and earth, the Supreme Hunter and the Supreme Killer. Is seen there. This is all crazy, guys. The ancient text also describes some vehicle used to lift aeronauts into the skies. Gudea stated that as the divine bird rose to the circle of the lands, it flashed upon the raised bricks. The protected enclosure was described as Muna de Turtur. Muna de Turtur. Strong stone resting place of the Mu or Mu. Uru Kagina, who ruled in Lagash, said in regard to the divine black winged bird, the Mu that lights up as a fire I made high and strong. Similarly, Lu Utu, who ruled in Umma in the 3rd millennium BC, constructed a place for a Mu, which in a fire comes forth for the god Utu, in the appointed place within his temple. The Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar II, recording his rebuilding of Marduk's sacred precinct, said that within fortified walls made of burned brick and gleaming onyx marble, I raised the head of the boat Idgil, the chariot of Marduk's prince, princeliness. The boat Zagmuku, whose approach is observed, the supreme traveler between heaven and earth, in the midst of the pavilion I enclosed, screening off its sides. Idgil, the first epithet employed to describe this supreme traveler or chariot of Marduk, literally means high to heaven, bright at night. Zagmuku, the second epithet describing the vehicle, clearly a boat, nesting in a special pavilion, means the bright Mu, which is for afar. that a MU, an oval-topped conical object, was indeed installed on the inner sacred enclosure of the temples of the great gods of heaven and earth can fortunately be proved. An ancient coin found at Byblos, the biblical Jabal, on the Mediterranean coast of present-day Lebanon depicts the great temple of Ishtar. Though shown as it stood in the first millennium BC, the requirement that temples be built and rebuilt upon the same site and in accordance with the original plan undoubtedly means that we see the basic elements of the original temple of Byblos traced to a millennia earlier. The coin depicts a two-part temple. In front stands the main temple structure, imposing with its columned gateway. Behind it is an inner courtyard or sacred area, hidden and protected by a high, massive wall. It is clearly a raised area, for it can be reached only by ascending many stairs in figure 67 on the next page. In the center of this sacred area stands a special platform, its cross-beam construction resembling that of the Eiffel Tower, as though built to withstand great weight. And on the platform stands the object of all its security and protection, an object that can only be a MU. I'm gonna get something to drink, y'all. Be right back. So here is that coin in figure 67. A coin found at Byblos. That's spelled Byblos, which is biblical for Jabal, Gebal, which is located on the Mediterranean coast of present-day Lebanon, and it's depicting Ishtar's temple. The courtyards, the entranceway with the two beams, the altar at the entrance, and you have the star here. Like most Sumerian syllabic words, MU had a primary meaning. In the case of MU, it was that which rises straight. This 30 odd nuances encompassed the meanings heights, fire, command, a counted period, as well as, in later times, that by which one is remembered. If we trace the written sign for MU from its Assyrian and Babylonian cuneiform stylizations to its original Sumerian pictographs, the following pictorial evidence emerges. So here we're starting from left to right. All the way from the Assyrian and Babylonians. We clearly see a conical chamber depicted by itself or with the narrow section attached to it. From a golden chamber in the sky, I will watch over thee. Inanna promised to the Assyrian king. Was this MU the heavenly chamber? A hymn to Inanna or Ishtar and her journeys in the boat of heaven clearly indicates that the MU was the vehicle in which the gods roamed the skies far and high. Lady of heaven, she puts on the garment of heaven. She valiantly ascends towards heaven. Over all the peopled lands, she flies in her MU. Lady who, in her MU, to the heights of heaven joyfully wings. Over all the resting places, she flies in her MU. There is evidence to show that the people of the Eastern Mediterranean had seen such rocket-like object not only in a temple enclosure, but actually in flight. Hittite glyphs, for example, showed against a background of starry heavens, cruising missiles, rockets mounted on launch pads, and a god inside a radiating chamber in figure 68. So there's the god radiating in his chamber with all that fore action mentioned just now. See, we got the MU, the holy bird. Professor H. Frankfurt in Cylinder Seals, demonstrating how both the art of making the Mesopotamian cylinder seals and the subjects depicted on them spread throughout the ancient world, reproduces the design on a seal found in Crete and dated to the 13th century BC. The seal design clearly depicts a rocket ship moving in the skies and propelled by flames escaping from its rear in figure 69. Okay. The winged horses, the entwined animals, the winged celestial globe, and the deity with horns protruding from his headdress are all known Mesopotamian themes. It can certainly be assumed that the fiery rocket shown on the Cretan seal was also an object familiar throughout the ancient Near East. Indeed, a rocket with wings or fins, reachable by a ladder, can be seen on a tablet excavated at Gezer, Gezer, a town in ancient Canaan, west of Jerusalem. The double imprint of the same seal also shows a rocket resting on the ground next to a palm tree. The celestial nature or destination of the objects is attested by symbols of the sun, moon, and zodiacal constellations that adorn the seal in figure 70. So y'all, I'm gonna have to update the video including both those figures. I didn't realize that until just now. My apologies. And we'll stop there because again, I'd like to keep things divided equally as best as I can. And that being said, I want to thank you all for offering me your time, and I appreciate all and any comments left. Just any information to be added to this would greatly be appreciated. In that case, that's it for today. I don't know if I'll probably end up be reading um, a continued video into the chapter, but yeah, thank you all. I appreciate it. Love you guys. Stay safe.